Welcome to Unit 5, Populations at Higher Risk. By the end of this unit, you will recognize which populations are at higher risk from the adverse effects of air pollution. To understand who is at higher risk from the adverse effects of air pollution, it is important to clarify the concepts of susceptibility and vulnerability. Susceptibility is an innate or acquired physical predisposition that increases the relative risk of experiencing health effects as a result of air pollution exposure, such as pre-existing conditions or diseases. Susceptibility includes life course factors, for example, being an older person, a child, or a pregnant woman. Genetic factors including certain polymorphisms as well as genetic disorders, and pre-existing conditions or comorbidities such as chronic diseases, respiratory diseases, or other non-communicable diseases like diabetes. Vulnerability means that people have increased exposure to air pollution due to external factors such as place of residence, work, or home, especially if close to traffic or closer to other sources of emissions. Precarious living conditions, for example, living in slums, the type of occupation, for example, street vendors or other forms of outdoor workers, as well as low socioeconomic status. Factors associated with lower socioeconomic status that can make a person more vulnerable to air pollution exposure includes poor diet, lack of exercise, lack of access to green spaces, lack of access to healthcare, living next to a busy road, having to commute in busy traffic, and lack of access to clean energy at a household level. Susceptible population groups differ between short-term or long-term exposures. Even apparently healthy people are susceptible to the effects of long-term exposure to particulate matter. Exposure can potentially accelerate progression of disease or even initiate it until it is clinically diagnosed. However, the most susceptible to the effects of short-term exposures are those with an unstable and/or chronic conditions or comorbidities. As noted, different life course factors can bring increased susceptibility to air pollution, in particular for older people, children, and pregnant women. The number of people aged over 60 is expected to double by 2050, a new demographic reality that must be taken into account when we consider diseases related to air pollution at the population level. The reason for the increased susceptibility of older people is that, at a biological level, the aging process is associated with a gradual accumulation of molecular and cellular damage. Over time, this damage leads to a gradual decrease in physiological reserves, with increased risk of many diseases and general decline, which make older people more fragile. Increased exposure to pollution has been associated with increased mortality, hospital admissions, and emergency room visits for older people, mainly the result of exacerbation of chronic diseases or respiratory tract infections. As we said, comorbidities can affect susceptibility, and older people are the population group most likely to suffer from such conditions. Children are also at greater risk than adults from the many adverse health effects of air pollution because of a combination of physiological, environmental, and behavioral factors. Children's immune, respiratory, and central nervous system are still developing, and so they are highly sensitive to environmental stimuli, including air pollution. They are especially susceptible during fetal development and in their earliest years, while their lungs, organs, and brain are still maturing. Children breathe at higher rates to adults and more frequently breathe through their mouth, so that they take in air pollutants at higher doses. Their lower height also means that they live and play closer to the ground, where some pollutants reach peak concentrations. They also tend to engage in more outdoor physical activity. Children are exposed starting from the womb as they are vulnerable to their mother's exposure to pollutants. Particularly in low and middle-income countries, young children spending time with their mothers in the home are exposed to household air pollution from the use of unclean fuels and technologies for cooking, heating and lighting. Download the reading materials for more details on air pollution risks to children. Women are considered a population at higher risk of experiencing the negative health effects of air pollution, particularly in the context of household air pollution. The reason for these gender inequities is that in low and middle-income countries, women are generally more exposed to air pollution deriving from the use of unclean fuels and technologies for cooking, heating and lighting in and around the home. Together with children, and especially girls, they are the main procurers of fuels, which is linked to both health and safety risks, as we learned in Module 2. You have now completed Unit 5. Please download the reading material for further information. Now try the end of module quiz.